Today, Tony Robbins coaches presidents and billionaires, but at 17, he was planning to kill someone out of pure rage. How did this angry teenager become the force that changed 50 million lives? This story will show you that your greatest trauma might actually be the source of your greatest power. This isn't just a success story, this is proof that rising from humanity's darkest places to its brightest peaks is possible. If you're ready, let's begin this incredible transformation journey. February 29, 1960, in one of Los Angeles's poorest neighborhoods, a baby was born named Anthony J. Mahavoric. When he was just 7 years old, his father abandoned the family and never returned. Left behind were a financially struggling mother and 3 children. Tony's mother, Nikki, began constantly remarrying new men just to survive. But unfortunately, these marriages only brought new forms of violence into their home. Tony spent most of his childhood watching his stepfathers beat his mother. "I would lie in my bed at night listening to my mother's screams," Tony would later recount. "There was this rage building inside me, but I also felt completely helpless. I was just a kid. What could I do?" But the real trauma was his mother's treatment of him. Nikki projected the psychological pressure she experienced onto her children. She would constantly scream at Tony, humiliate him for hours, telling him he would never amount to anything. The family was constantly moving, from one apartment to another, each time to worse conditions. There was no food. Tony learned to steal food from grocery stores just to feed his siblings. By high school, Tony was already 6'7" tall, but skinny as a rail because there simply wasn't enough food. Teachers saw him as a troubled child, someone with a giant frame, anger issues, and a habit of disrupting classes. When Tony turned 17, the violence at home had reached its peak. His stepfather at the time was particularly aggressive, and Tony could no longer tolerate the situation. He started spending hours in the gym, building his massive body, and had only one plan in his mind: revenge. "I had so much anger inside me," Tony would later confess. "I was planning to hurt people. I was planning to hurt my stepfather. Rage had consumed me, and I didn't care about the consequences." He was constantly fighting at school. His grades were terrible. Teachers referred him to the school psychologist, but Tony didn't trust anyone. He felt completely alone. He was in his senior year of high school, and Tony was experiencing the darkest period of his life. One night, after a particularly violent family fight, Tony considered going to his stepfather's room with a knife in his hand. That night, he sat in his bedroom, staring at the knife in his hand. "That night, I really thought about killing someone," he would confess years later. "The anger was so intense that my mind was clouded. If I had made a different decision that night, I would either be in prison now or dead. But that night, something miraculous happened. A sentence from a book he had read as a child came to Tony's mind. Taking revenge is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die." This sentence made him pause. When Tony was 17, he witnessed an event that would change his life. He had the opportunity to listen to a motivational speaker named Jim Rohn at a local symposium. This seminar was free because Tony didn't have money to pay for such an event. Jim Rohn said on stage, "If you want to change your life, you must first change yourself. If you want to change yourself, you must first change what you read." These words had a bomb-like effect on Tony's brain. For the first time, he heard someone saying there was a way out of his situation. For the first time, he heard someone say, "You can change." After the seminar, Tony approached Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn saw the fire in Tony's eyes and gave him special advice. "Son, you're different. You have great power inside you, but you're using it in the wrong direction. You can use this anger to help people." Jim Rohn gave Tony a list of books and suggested he read books every day and develop himself. That night, when Tony returned home, he had seen a ray of hope for the first time in his life. In the following months, Tony began reading for hours every day. Psychology, philosophy, success stories. He read everything. As the hours he spent in the library increased, the violence at home began to affect him less. Tony was learning to control his anger. But more importantly, he was learning to transform this anger into something else: passion. After graduating from high school, Tony started working for Jim Rohn's organization. He started at the lowest level, cleaning seminar halls, but for Tony, this was university. Every day he listened to motivational speakers, learning their techniques. One day, Jim Rohn told Tony, "You want to help people too, don't you? Then start telling your own story." Tony gave his first seminar at 18, at a small community center in Los Angeles. There were only 12 people. Tony was so excited that he spoke for 3 hours. People were satisfied. But Tony was still an amateur. The first few years were very difficult. Tony sometimes went months without any income. He gave small seminars, but attendance was very low. Once only 3 people came to his seminar. "I had very tough moments in those days," Tony recounts. "Sometimes my electricity was cut off because I couldn't pay the bills. But I didn't give up because I now had a mission." At 21, Tony made a big decision. He started developing his own methodology. Instead of just repeating what Jim Rohn taught, he developed an original approach by blending his own experiences with the psychology knowledge he researched. He called this approach neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. It was a method of changing people's behaviors by changing their thought patterns. In 1983, when Tony was 23, an opportunity came that would change his life. The CEO of a large company in Los Angeles wanted motivational seminars for his employees, but not a regular seminar, an intensive 3-day program. Tony was determined not to miss this opportunity. For 3 days, from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., he gave seminars to a group of 200 people. He made people dance, scream, face their fears. At the end of the seminar, one of the participants, a woman named Sarah Mitchell, approached Tony and said with tears in her eyes, "I've been battling depression for 20 years. Today I felt strong for the first time. You saved my life." This moment was the biggest turning point in Tony's life. Until that moment, he saw seminars as a job, but from that moment on, he realized that this work actually had the power to change people's lives. In the following years, Tony's fame spread rapidly. In 1986, he published his first book, Unlimited Power. The book made it to the bestseller lists in America. Now Tony was giving seminars in halls of 2,000 to 3,000 people. In 1991, his second book, Awaken the Giant Within, was published, and this book sold more than 15 million copies worldwide. Tony was now a recognized name not only in America, but worldwide. By the mid-1990s, Tony's seminars were being held in stadiums. 10,000 to 15,000 people would come to listen to his speeches. But Tony's real goal wasn't just to speak to crowds. He also wanted to reach world leaders. In 1993, then U.S. President Bill Clinton invited Tony to the White House. Clinton was going through a difficult period and wanted to receive personal coaching services from Tony. This was one of the biggest moments in Tony's career. "Working with the president was incredible for me," Tony recounts. "For someone who witnessed domestic violence as a child, to coach the most powerful man in the country, this was proof that everything was possible." After Bill Clinton, Tony also coached world leaders like Nelson Mandela, Mikhail Gorbachev, and Margaret Thatcher. He also became the personal coach of celebrities like Serena Williams, Hugh Jackman, and Leonardo DiCaprio. But Tony's greatest success was changing the lives of ordinary people. The Date with Destiny program he launched in the 2000s was an experience where people underwent intense transformation for 6 days. Thousands of people who participated in this program experienced radical changes in their lives. Couples on the verge of divorce reconciled, depressed people regained hope, unemployed people found new careers. In 2007, Tony gave a TED Talk, and this talk became one of the most watched motivational speeches in internet history. More than 50 million people watched this speech. With Tony's success, he didn't forget his past. His childhood experiences of poverty and violence led him to philanthropy. In 2014, he established the Tony Robbins Foundation. This foundation provides food to millions of people worldwide, offers educational opportunities, and provides mentorship services to young people. One of the foundation's biggest projects is distributing 100 million meals annually. Tony says, "I remember being hungry as a child. No child should go hungry." Tony also teaches people not only personal development, but also financial independence through programs like Business Mastery and Wealth Mastery. Thousands of people who participated in these programs started their own businesses and built their dream lives. In 2020, during the COVID-19 pandemic, Tony moved all his seminars online and provided free content to millions of people. In times of crisis, people need hope the most, he said, never stopping his work throughout the pandemic. Today, at 64 years old, Tony Robbins still travels more than 300 days a year and speaks at seminars. In his career, spanning over 40 years, he has touched the lives of more than 50 million people. The most impressive aspect of Tony's story is his ability to transform trauma into power. The violence he experienced in childhood could have driven him to violence, but instead he transformed this pain into a force that would ease other people's pain. Our greatest gifts are born from our greatest pains, says Tony. If you can use the pain your past has given you for the good of others, that pain gains meaning. At the core of Tony's methodology is state management, improving people's quality of life by changing their physical and mental states. This technique was a method Tony developed while learning to control his own anger. Another fundamental principle is values hierarchy, people clearly determining what they value in life and building a life in accordance with these values. When Tony discovered that his highest value in his own life was contribution, he found true satisfaction. Among Tony's teachings is also the 6 human needs theory: certainty, variety, significance, connection, growth, contribution. This theory was shaped by the lessons Tony drew from his own life experiences. Tony, who had no certainty in his childhood, taught that people must meet these basic needs in healthy ways. Today, Tony Robbins is not just a motivational speaker, but also a successful businessman. He has over 30 companies, and his net worth exceeds $600 million. But for Tony, real wealth is in the lives he touches. More than 10,000 people participate in the annual Unleash the Power Within events. At these events, there's Tony's famous firewalking ceremony. People walk on hot coals to overcome their fears. Walking on fire is not just a physical action, says Tony. It's proof that you've transcended your own limits. If you can walk on fire, you can do anything in life. Tony's married life is also part of his transformation. After his first marriage ended unsuccessfully, he married Sage Robbins in 2001. Sage is both Tony's life partner and business partner. Together, they help millions of people improve their relationships. The failure of my first marriage taught me that you need to constantly grow in relationships too, says Tony. If you're not growing, you're dying. This applies not only to business life, but also to private life. Tony's daily routine is still very busy. He wakes up at 5 a.m. every morning, meditates, exercises, and reviews his daily plans. Despite being 64 years old, his energy is as much as young people in their 20s. Tony Robbins' story is not just one person's success story. This is the story of the power of the human spirit. It's proof that our brightest victories can be born from our darkest moments. What about your story? Maybe you too have experienced traumas in the past. Maybe you too have felt helpless. Maybe you too have struggled with anger and pain. But Tony's story shows us this: everything can change. The main principles that changed Tony's life are: 1. Invest in yourself. Tony started developing himself by reading books. You should never stop learning. 2. Find a mentor. Jim Rohn changed Tony's life. You need to find someone who will guide you too. 3. Transform your trauma into power. Tony turned his pain into the power to serve others. You too can use the experiences your past has given you in a positive way. 4. Serve. The more people Tony served, the more successful he became. Adding value to others is the best way to increase your own value. 5. Never give up. Tony failed many times but never gave up. Success belongs to those who don't give up. Tony Robbins says today, if you want to change your life, change your decisions. If you want to change your decisions, change your focus. What you focus on becomes your reality. When this video ends, ask yourself this question: what will my story be? Remember, Tony Robbins was once ordinary like you, But he made extraordinary decisions and created an extraordinary life. Your time is now. As Rise Stories, we will continue to bring you such inspiring stories every week because we know that every person has potential inside them. They just need to hear the right story that will bring out that potential. Don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to like, and don't forget to share your own transformation story in the comments. As Tony Robbins says, change is inevitable, but growth is optional. What choice will you make today?